I went to that game. It must have been a
Let me welcome you to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, September the 3rd, 2019, and welcome again for being here. At this time, if you would, check all your telephones and other devices that you might have with you and put those on silent for me. I would appreciate that. Let me remind you when you come up to speak to us, if you will activate the little red light on your microphone on the end, we would appreciate that. Madam Clerk, this time I will do the roll call. I'd like to report some good news, but I can't report good news today. We've got a number of individuals that work here for the county that are ill. Rhonda Lee is suffering some issues. If you'll please remember Rhonda as she goes back home, and we'll be going in for some tests. Commissioner Taylor will not be with us today. He is under the weather and is asking for prayers. Also, Margaret Pierce, our Deputy County Manager, is out today. Her husband, Will, is suffering extremely from an issue, and that family needs our prayer tremendously. Substituting for Margaret today will be Scott Cook, sitting down there on the end, who doesn't want me to announce today, but he is the big 5-0 today. So happy birthday, Scott. And trust me and Wayne, it gets better when we get there, right, Wayne? Exactly. All right, with those announcements, gentlemen, we'll move to the agenda. You've had the agenda for a day or two, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. All right, you've heard Wayne's motion. All in favor signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, that will be the 4-0. Moving on into the presentations. The first one today will be the Pet of the Month, and will be presented by Caitlin Settlemeyer, our Animal Services Director. Good to see you, Caitlin.
Hi, so today's kind of a placeholder. We just opened back up from last week's renovation, so we don't really have a pet right now. So this is kind of just a placeholder for at the regular scheduled agenda meetings to bring a pet to showcase. Hopefully we can get it adopted. So that's our goal.
Gentlemen, comments for Caitlin?
Will that pet be available for adoption?
Yes, it'll be one of our adoptable animals.
I think Mr. Abrams said he was going to take it. Is that right?
I think that's what I heard as well. So.
Yeah, I think everybody here has an adopted pet, but that is great, and we do appreciate the fact that you're going to bring that one animal to us, and we're going to encourage the citizens of Burke County to adopt that particular one that you bring with you. All right, gentlemen, if there's no other questions or comments, wait a minute, got one more. Jeff, I'm sorry.
Caitlin, can you give us just a brief touch on the renovations and
yes, last week we were closed. We recently had our floors refinished. We were closed last week to have our walls refinished to bring them up to code. So they had to sand 20 years of paint off the walls and repaint halfway up. So it may not look the best, but it is functional, and we will pass inspection with that. So that is where we are currently. Today we've taken in 14 animals so far. So so we need some adoptions.
Anything else, gentlemen? Just a little premature there. All right, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Caitlin. Moving on to item number 2 is recognition of Detective Jared Ball for the Advanced Law Enforcement Certification. Sheriff Wisnett will be here to present that at our regular meeting. All of us are aware of those advanced law enforcement certifications. I have mine, and I attest that takes a long time and a lot of work to get that that certificate, and one should be proud of that. And item number 3 will be from the sheriff also to recognize Lieutenant Steve Massey for his award of the Advanced Law Enforcement Certificate. So without objections, item number 2 and item number 3 will remain on the consent agenda, on the agenda for next Tuesday's regular meeting. All right, let's move forward to our scheduled public hearings. Our first one from Community Development will be zoning map amendment ZTA 2019-01 in a public hearing presented by Pete Miller, Planning, Zoning, and or Scott, whichever one's here. So take her away, Pete.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Board. This zoning text amendment is pretty short. Actually, it was initiated by a citizen who lives on Lake Road Hiss. They are wanting to build a new boat dock for their residents, and that current standards do not allow for metal roofs on boat docks, and they are petitioning the commissioners to consider adopting an amendment to section 1216 of the Burke County zoning ordinance to allow for metal roof material on Lake Road Hiss. The staff has made their own amendment to that with the approval of the planning board and the applicant to also include Lake Hickory as well, because those lakes are the same essentially. And so the amendment would be for Lakes Hickory and Lake Road Hiss to allow for metal roofing material on residential boat docks.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard Pete's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand this. I think and we already have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when I read through here, about 23 boat docks already on Lake James that have metal roofing. Is that what I read? And the metal roofing is lighter. It's going to last longer. It's not going to shed like a shingle roof eventually as you get old. The material is going to go into the lake or whatever. And the metal boat docks that are on the lake already, they look great. I mean, I don't see any problem with metal roofing on Lake James. Since we already, apparently a lot of people have broke the law already and have metal roofs on their docks.
Yeah.
So we don't govern it, apparently. We let people get away with putting it on, so why don't we just say you can have a metal roofing? I mean, if we already have, did I not read that there's 23 boat docks already on Lake James that are metal roofing?
There's I'm not sure exactly on Lake James that there's that many, but there's the majority on Lake Road Hiss and Hickory that are metal roofs. Those docks did not have regulations for many years, and then when county adopted the standards for Lake James and Lake Road Hiss and Hickory, they made those consistent so that all roofs would have the wood shake or the asphalt shingles.
But that's not happening.
Well, it is when they're coming in for approvals.
But apparently they're getting away with putting the metal docks. I see it out on the lake. I mean, to me, the metal is much prettier, and environmentally, I think the metal is much better. So I don't see why we're not allowing the metal roofing on the boat docks. I just think, I don't like that. As the shingles get older and all that stuff starts washing in the water when it rains, why are we not allowing metal boat docks? I mean, metal roofs.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's just something that Lake James has always been sort of it's separate animal from.
But we're not enforcing the regulations because there is metal roofs on the lake.
Yeah.
So if we're not going to enforce it, why? Why not allow metal roofs? Aesthetically, I think they're prettier. more environmentally sound, I don't see any problem with that.
Well, that's something that the board may want to consider. Lake James has always been sort of separate, more natural.
How many boat docks do we have on Lake James that have metal roofs?
I'm
I
not
mean, I
sure,
thought
to
I
be
read in
honest.
here 23. Maybe I misread that wrong, but I thought I read that there's 23. So apparently we're not enforcing the regulation, and why?
Yeah, I couldn't comment on that. What's that?
That's not in our report, 23.
Someplace in here I read 23. I don't know
Yeah.
where it is right at this moment, but
You may
but there is boat docks out there with metal roofs. I know that.
It's quite possible, and those.
It's not quite possible. It is possible. They're out there. They're not. It's not quite possible. They are out there. So as a board, I personally think we need to look at this and say, the metal roofs are fine. I think that aesthetically they're nicer looking and whatever, and I think they're a lot better for the water quality as the other ones get older and they start shedding rock into the lake or the stuff off the shingle, whatever you call that. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I sure, to me, they're a lot better looking. And I don't know why in the beginning we didn't allow metal roofs, because I think aesthetically they're better looking and probably better for water quality.
Yeah, that was originally put in the ordinance way back from the beginning.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that because when I'm out on the lake, I see these metal roofs. I was astonished that we're saying in here that there's,
Right. Yeah, I don't know that we've approved any metal.
Why aren't we approving metal roofs? Why are we against metal roofs?
They may not be aesthetically the same as
That's not
what
true,
the
though.
ordinance wants to have.
That's not true.
Answer the question.
So, Mr. Wayne, the reason that these have not been approved in Burke County, it goes back to 2004 when all the ordinances were rewritten and all those regulations were put into place. So those predate us. Most of the metal roofs that you're seeing are in McDowell County, and so we don't have the same regulations. We do try to enforce them in Burke County. So a citizen came to us and said, well, everybody else on Lake Roadhead has these metal roofs. And so we started looking at it, and we found out that sure enough, most of the other municipalities and the other entities allow for those. And so we supported that on those two lakes and said, we don't have a problem with it. And we took it to the planning board, and that's what's here today.
So what's wrong with the metal roofs?
Well, we didn't say there was anything wrong with them.
And why are we outlawing them?
They were disallowed just on Lake James years ago.
That's silly.
I didn't write the rules.
Well, I'm just saying,
just
I think
enforce
we
it.
need to make a change, because I think aesthetically they're better looking than a shingle roof or whatever, the wood shingles or whatever. They're sure a lot lighter, and environmentally, I mean, they don't shed stuff into the lake.
And we have made changes to the ordinance on Lake James to allow for other types of composite roofing and other materials that didn't make sense about 2 years ago. When did we make those changes?
About 2 years.
Are you against metal roofs?
Am I against them personally?
Yeah.
I don't have any heartburn with them.
Well, I think we need to change the ordinance then.
We just haven't ever had a discussion about them.
Just tell me that they're not aesthetically, probably look better than the roof that we're approving or whatever, unless it's maybe wood shakes, but I think the metal roofing, looks a lot better. It's a lot lighter for one thing. It's a lot cleaner, I think. I just don't have a problem, Mr. Chairman, with with this, and I think we need to change the ordinance.
Okay, in front of us today is a request to change, and I'm going to quit saying Lake Roadhis because we're not talking about Lake Roadhis, we're talking about the Catawba River. The
Right.
request today in front of us is for the Catawba River to change the metal. And in the documentation that Wayne was reading, it says on the Catawba River, 43 are metal and 10 are asphalt composites on the Catawba River. So the only thing in front of us today is to amend the ordinance to change for the Catawba River, which is commonly known as Lake Hickory, Lake Roadhis. Am I correct in what I'm saying for today?
Yes, sir.
That request was made by these fine folks wanting to put up the metal, which I don't have a problem with whatsoever, since 43 are already metal and 10 are of the composite for the Catawba River. As far as Wayne's request, as far as Lake James, I think that's a totally separate issue from today, and I'm going to request through Wayne that you take a look at that and maybe bring something back for us for Lake James. What we have today is to talk about the Catawba River. We'll go ahead and get it out of the way, and then we'll do the lake on a separate occasion, and maybe you can supply some good numbers for us to take a look at. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
And just for clarity's sake, it says earth tones in here. Can you give us exactly what those earth tones would be? The colors of the roof, because I don't have a problem with it
So
either.
they're
on Lake
browns
Road.
and tans and grays and blacks and things like that.
Blue's not going to be considered earth tones.
Blue isn't bright yellow, orange, pink.
I just want clarity
Purple
for
or
everybody,
not.
so we don't get surprised on what interpretation of earth tones entails. I want that kind of clear.
There's a
But-
standard palette for them.
Sure, but that was my only question, but like I said, I don't have a problem with doing that on the Catawba River.
Jeff, any comments? Mr. County Manager, any comments?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. County Manager, I'm going to direct through you to get with your staff over here, and let's come back with something and check that ordinance at Lake James, and then we'll have it on at another day. But in front of us today, again, we're talking about the Catawba River, commonly known as Lake Hickory, Lake Roadhis. Is there any other questions or comments
Well,
about?
Johnny,
Yes, sir.
the last motion to amend or deny the proposed text amendment will create inconsistent standards for residential boat moorings or gazebos on the three lakes. So does that include Lake James?
No, that was Lake. All right, let me read that again.
So that's the very last thing in the motion
It
on
says on
page
the three,
41.
okay, well, create, this is, all right, let me read one more time.
You either pass this one.
Or that one, yeah. But this one here would include Lake James, right? It says the three lakes.
I think there's two motions there.
I know it, but the one motion would include Lake James, right?
Right. That's if you were to deny this.
That's if you were to deny.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Now, what's in front of us still is on the Catawba River. And
Right,
it actually,
that was the request that we
yeah,
received.
the request that we received, and then the second part of that is to continue with the existing standards at Lake James, but we're going to ask you to look at those existing standards and see if they need to be changed.
Right. That's right.
So whether you can do that in a separate motion at a later date and with more information.
We can do that for sure.
Yeah, this was a citizen-initiated request, so that's what we're following through with here. If we need to look at Lake James separately, we can do that.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll
I
let
can-
Bradley.
Come on in there.
Just to fill in, the applicant or the one who made the petition, Carrie Ann Jean, I believe is the lady's name.
Yes.
Property owner there on Lake Hickory in Harbor Ridge subdivision.
Lake Hickory, Catawba River.
Yes, on the Catawba River, but on the eastern end of Burke.
Okay.
So when an applicant were to come in to us with a drawing of a proposed dock, my job is to turn and review that application. Within that application, they provide us a sketch and a design. If within that sketch and design currently, if it shows for a metal roof, that application is denied. So within the roofing structure itself, it's supposed to be earth tone colors, wood shakes, shingles, things of that nature. Do I personally have an issue with metal roofs? No, sir, I don't. They do last longer, they would hold up, they're much better for weight. A lot of these, when they're designed and placed from an engineered standpoint, adding the shingle roof is an added weight to it and becomes much more of a complex and a problem. So the metal would be better in that regard. The sketch that is provided to you, which I think was in your drawing, when I met with Miss Jean through there, one of the things that I stressed to her that she as a property owner needed to understand was that you have multiple jurisdictions on that end of the Catawba River. Most of those do not apply to the rule that's in front of you for a vote. Most of that does not. And the biggest issue that we see is the other jurisdictions such as Rutherford College, Road Hiss, Valdez, those have very little, if anything, regarding how a dock can be constructed. So when Miss Jean was looking directly across the code from her, everything there's got a metal roof. She would be a newly constructed coming to me. I deny that request. She obviously wants hers to look the same as there. The difference is straight across that cove is a different jurisdiction. So that head count and that drawing right there is actually done by me. And the reason I did that was to explain to her, as you go down here and you get in your boat, don't think everything you're passing got a permit from me. Doesn't mean that it was approved, doesn't mean it was denied, but it's very complex on that end, whereas on the Lake James side of things, everything in Burke County would come through us for the same guideline. So ultimately, if it's something that needs to be explored, doing it lake-wide, all up and down the Catawba, that's what would be looked at. But the specifics were placed strictly for Lake James as they're currently written, as voted by the board. Just wanted to make sure everybody clearly understood that, because that chart can be a little misleading. And if someone says there's 43 up and down there, yeah, there's probably 43 on that end. Not all those 43 would have got a permit from us.
Exactly.
Because they wouldn't have had to. Hope that clarifies that.
You did clarify that, and I'm still of the opinion that we need to go ahead and do the Catawba River portion of this and then look at the Lake James portion of it at a separate time.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We can come back with Lake James.
Okay. Good?
Yep.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
All right. Without objection, then, this will remain on the agenda. All right. Moving on to our consent agenda, the first item on the consent agenda is hours of operation at the Animal Services Center, presented by Caitlin Settlemeyer, again from the Animal Services Director. Caitlin, if you will step forward and tell us about this proposed change.
All right, so as you can see, our current operating hours aren't very adoption friendly. So our current hours, we are closed to the public on Sunday. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. to the public to come in and view animals, surrender animals, turn in their strays. We're also open 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturdays. So very short hours on Saturdays. Our new proposed hours would be closed Sunday and Monday, but open later throughout the week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays would be open 10 to 7 so we can get more people into our doors. Wednesdays and Fridays we open 10 to 4 and Saturday 10 to 4 as well. So hopefully increasing our hours, we can get more foot traffic in there and get our little animals out of the building.
All right, gentlemen, you heard the presentation by Caitlin. Any questions or comments? All right. Hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, moving on to our next item on the consent agenda is removal and appointments to the Board of Adjustments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove Doris Smith's name from the official roster for the Board of Adjustment. Her term ends September 30th, and she is not seeking reappointment at this time. We did receive an application from Terry Yunt of Morganton, and the term would be for 3 years ending September 2022.
All right, gentlemen, questions for Kay on this matter?
No questions, but Kay, I think you said Terry Yunt, but
Tony.
there is a Terry, but I think.
Tony, pardon me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 3 is reappointment to the Jury Commission. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Robert Love's term on the Jury Commission ends September 30th, and he has served on this commission for many years and would like to serve another term. The term would end September 30th, 2021.
Questions or comments, gentlemen? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 4 is appointment to the Planning Board. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a multifaceted request. Seat number 2, representing the East on the Burke County Planning Board, is occupied by Bobby Costner. His term ends September 30th, but he is not seeking a reappointment at this time. At your table, you should have a handout of an application from Michael Coltera that just came in today. So I will, with your permission, amend this item to appoint Mr. Coltera, who is in the East. Seat number 4, representing the West, was held by Nick Newton. Mr. Newton is not able to attend meetings, and so we are requesting his removal. However, Mr. Robert Love would like to take that seat and currently serves on the Board of Adjustment and the Jury Commission. Alan Scholl occupies seat number 5, representing the West, and he has served the maximum number of terms, but we are not requesting his removal until we can find a replacement.
Questions or comments for Kay on this? Leaving Mr. Scholl on there violates no procedures, right? Yes? Okay, I'll take that question back.
So if you know anybody.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about these appointments and amendments? Okay, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Okay. Moving on to item number 5 is a resolution appointing new review officers for the town of Glen Alpin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This resolution designates William Max Bullock and Sherry Ferris as review officers for the town of Glen Alpin. Mr. Bullock and Ms. Ferris completed 4 hours of training provided by the Department of the Secretary of State. And by review officers, that means they review plats and sign off on plats.
Questions or comments on these appointments for Glen Alpin? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you.
Moving to item number 6 is from Community Development. Deed of trust cancellation. That's going to be presented by Jennifer Forney, our planner. Jennifer, if you will come up, please, ma'am.
Thank you. As you can see, we are requesting a cancellation of a deed of trust that was done under the CHAF program, and that program stood for Crisis Housing Assistance Fund. That fund was created after we had the floods back in '04 to help folks who were affected by that disaster. This deed of trust was expired in 2016, and the occupant is requesting that the deed be canceled, so we wanted to bring it before you for an opinion.
All right, gentlemen, questions or comments for Jennifer? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 7 and item number 8. Number 7 being our tax collection report for August. That will be presented by Danny Eisenhower, our tax administrator. Danny?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Sir.
First thing we'll go over is tax collection report, and if you remember the change that we made last meeting where we're showing the actual levy. So the first table that you look at there, the property tax levy is $42,931,335, and to date we've collected $27,186,138.46.
How far are we in the collection process?
2 months.
2 months, okay.
Yeah, which that's 63.32%. The next
categories down there, you'll see the current year taxes, which include property tax and motor vehicle tax. Now, this is actual collection compared to budget. We're at 58.29%. Delinquent taxes collections were at 29.33%, and late list penalties were at 34.13%.
Questions for Danny on the tax collection report for August? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to the refund report.
Refund report for the tax system, we have releases in the amount of $14,561.44. We had $7,761.87 rebilled, which give us a net release of $6,799.57. We have refunds in the amount of $274.95. On the vehicle tax system, we have adjustments and refunds in the amount of $130.49.
All right, questions on the refund report? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next chapter will be items for decision. Our first item from Community Development, condemnation appeal, case file number 116-19, presented by Bradley Kirkley, our zoning administrator. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First item for you that I bring to you today is regarding 2467 US Highway 70, located down in the Eichert area of Burke County. It is a home that caught fire, structure fire. The home was ordered to be condemned. Condemnation hearing was held. Procedures were turned and followed through that condemnation. That condemnation was issued out back on June 20th of 2019. Through reporting today, within taking a look to see when the actual structure fire occurred, looks like the home actually caught fire back on January 31st of 2008. The property is fenced, which has no trespassing signs noted there to it, but the interior of the property inside of the fence itself, as what was included within your photos, is a partially remaining single-family home. Within that condemnation, Mr. Smith, the landowner of the property, filed an appeal, not necessarily stating he disagrees with the decision, but stating he has health concerns and health issues and needs more than the maximum allotted time of 60 days. Now, you may be asking, why is that 60 days already passed? Due to vacation and due to Steve Holden being out on medical leave, we were short-staffed for what could actually be here to present based on the condemnation that took place. So basically, once the appeal is filed, it puts things on hold until a decision comes from the board itself. So within there, they basically state within their appeal hearing that they needed more time. My understanding from Mr. Smith, he's in a declining state of health. I do not know the specifics on what he turns and has, but is requesting more time. So basically, the item for you today is either to, by general statute, you can affirm the decision of Steve Holden, or I believe it was Kevin Flynn, I'm sorry. Kevin Flynn actually issued the condemnation order on this one. So you can affirm the order of Kevin of granting no more than 60 days, and that 60 days would begin from the decision date of the board. You could affirm and modify, meaning you could take and say, yes, the structure needs to come down, but we're going to give you more time than what is allowed for the 60 days, or you could deny the overall hearing and state that the structure can remain in its current state. A copy of the actual condemnation order was given. We try to offer more than one option to the property owner. A lot of folks are financially burdened to turn and demolish a home itself. So one of the things that we actually listed here to the structure, if they were looking to make it livable, they actually could pull necessary permits, get an engineer, start reconstruction work back to it to keep it as a usable house, or otherwise they had the option to demolish the structure itself. Have not been inside of the dwelling. Once again, the fences are on the property. We were not granted access to come on, but clearly from Highway 70 you can see that it's dilapidated. So before you is the option to give more time, and if so, you can specify it as you wish from your decision.
All right, you heard the presentation from Bradley. Questions or comments?
In your opinion, Bradley, do you think the house is salvageable or not? I mean, it's a brick,
If
it's a
someone
brick,
has
it's a brick outer walls, but.
Once again, haven't been inside of the structure. One thing that we do try to tell folks as well, depending upon how much you wish to spend, anything can be repaired. I don't know if financially they're in that state of situation. I would lean more towards that they would look to get it gone. But if they're strapped for cash, it's not an easy venture to turn and do. I would venture to say they're probably looking at least $5,000 to $10,000 they're going to drop to at least tear that thing down and get it cleaned up to where it's an empty lot. And once again, I don't know financially that they have that. So once again, depending upon your decision here, if the condemnation is upheld and we do grant additional time, which is fine, once that time expires, we may be back to you again to move something forward where taxpayers are having to turn and look to take it down, because then it's just a structure just sitting. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at giving advance time. And you can do as much time as you wish, it just has to be decided by the board. Because now by the appeal, it's overridden what Kevin's decision was.
Other questions or comments? So it cost us $10,000 or $15,000 to take it down too, if we had it, right?
Yeah. Now, we can do that through the purpose of liens. We can do that through other means of turning and doing. I did check within the tax office today. There are no outstanding taxes other than what just got mailed out for the 2019 year. So they're not delinquent on anything. We would also turn and look just dollar for dollar. You're looking at a 0.34 acre lot at a tax value of just under $16,000. So once again, demo is almost the cost of what the property is valued at with a house on it. So once again, getting your money back becomes a problem. To my recollection, we did have it as a citizen report, was not a name that was filed. I would venture to say it's someone living immediately, because where I'm standing at for this photo, I'm at the chain link fence. From the fence to the closest house is probably 15 yards. So they're right there on top of one another.
Is it in a neighborhood?
No, sir. It's right there on 70, just after you pass the cart pond. They're on 70. Just after you pass that, it's right on the left.
So it's been sitting in that condition, you said, for 11 years?
According to the fire marshal report, that is correct. I don't know that these same individuals have owned it the entire time. It looks like from tax records, these individuals purchased it in 2014. So they would have purchased it as a burnt home with the potential of upgrading and fixing it, would be my guess. Dollar-wise, never followed through with that. So the current owner that the condemn is held to is not the one who resided there when it caught fire.
Any other questions or comments? All right, without objection, this item is going to remain on the items for decision. Thank you, Bradley. Moving on to item number 2 on items for decision is abatement and demolition order number 4155 at St. Paul's Church Road. Bradley?
Thank you again. Similar type situation as what we just discussed, only this property at 4155 St. Paul's Church Road is in regards to a unpermitted mobile home. It's a single wide manufactured home, metal siding, metal roof. The property there on St. Paul's Church Road is zoned as R2, which as a vacant tract would allow for several options for residential uses. However, a metal on metal single wide is not one of those that we can give a permit for. So the property owner, whose legal name, and this led to some discrepancy here through search of the property itself, the legal property owner is a Kenneth Dwayne Piercy. Mr. Piercy did appear for us for the condemnation. We followed through with the same procedure for the unpermitted mobile home. Structure was posted as unsafe, had no power, no water. We had individuals residing within it. Neighbor had made the report there to us. As you can see in the top photo, the metal on metal mobile home was along St. Paul's Church Road. Immediately after our discovery, we mailed notice there to it. The property owner took it upon himself to move it back into the woods, thinking we would not see that. We still saw it, and we still followed through with our same procedure. It is still in the current state of the lower photo right now. I left there about an hour and a half ago to get an updated photo. Now, within the same packet that you had provided, there's a photo of a truck, which I believed was intentionally placed there. That truck is not owned by Mr. Piercy. That truck is now gone. That truck has been removed either by the owner of the vehicle or a towing company had removed it, but it is no longer there. I originally felt when I put the packet together for Madam Clerk that that had been placed there strictly to keep us from gaining access onto the property. It's also important to note that by tax records for this property list the landowner as a Kenneth Dwayne Epley. That is an alias. That is not his legal name. Kenneth Dwayne Piercy is the legal owner, and that is who we have mailed all correspondence there to. With this situation, by the mobile home being condemned and not being allowed to be there, it's not the same scenario as what we just dealt with the house. What we would be looking at is for the board to grant staff the opportunity to pursue whatever legal means we have necessary through the county attorney's office to pursue a removal of the mobile home to get it off of the property. As when the packet was done, at that time it would have been to remove the pickup truck as well and any solid waste that we could see. Looks like a truckload of some block and brick, which may still be there. That's the purpose and what we're putting together here. Dollar-wise, I don't know what we're turning and looking at. Generally, through the landfill, there's a standard disposal rate for a single-wide mobile home. It's a couple $100. Once again, we would want to make sure we follow proper legal protocol before we snatch something to it and haul it off. But at the same time, we would like the opportunity to at least get some bids, get some ideas on what we can look at, because the eyesore is not going away. Any questions?
All right, you've heard Bradley's report. Questions or comments?
I can just tell you, Mr. Chairman, based on personal experience, that's about a $2,500 removal and landfill fee or more.
To my knowledge, the mobile home, if I'm not mistaken, within the minutes, was brought from McDowell County. Let's just also state this clearly. The property owner is well known by Mr. Wisnett. So just so we know, he did attend the hearing. We have not had any correspondence back from that point. There were folks that did reside there. That has now ceased. I spoke to a neighbor today, simply asking when's the last activity you had seen there. They said it had been a month or better before they'd ever seen anybody back out there to the site. So all correspondence from us would still go through the landowner to seek the removal there of it. As said, just like with the burnt home, condemnation procedures was done. It was ordered. You had to get it off of it. We could not permit it. Left no other choice. I think a copy of the condemnation order was actually put in the packet as well.
Other questions or comments? So Jeff, you're saying that costs us $2,500 to get rid of it? Can we call McDowell to come get it back? Pull it across the county line? Don't put, newspaper's not here, thank gosh. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on items for decision. Thank you, Bradley.
Thanks, sir.
Moving on to item number 3 is Community Development Zoning Map Amendment ZMA 209. That will be a placeholder, and we're going to discuss that item at our 4 o'clock recess meeting. So from there, we'll move into our reports. From General Services, our water and sewer report presented by Miles Champion. Miles?
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in the middle of preparing new water and sewer maps as a visual for your regular meeting, and discuss both where your sewer comes and goes to, as well as how your new map looks once Roney Road and 18 South water lines are completed. And I'll also give you an update on where we are with the Roney Road and 18 South water lines. So we'll have some visuals to look at your regular meeting, and hopefully you'll have plenty of questions for me at that time.
All right, questions or comments for Miles? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on as a report item for the regular meeting. Okay, Miles, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion items that need to come before the board at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go back, if you don't mind, for just a moment to consent item number 6.
Okay. Deed of trust cancellation?
Yeah, the deed of trust. Mr. Attorney, can you tell me everything? I don't understand quite about that situation.
Okay, these loans were chaff.
Okay.
Did it do it itself? I mean, is it okay? Am I on? Okay, sorry. These chaff loans were distributed through a federal program beginning after the flood in 2004. And in Burke County, they were administered by Dale Meyer when he was here. Basically, you were given a grant, work was done on your property, and the cost of that work became a lien on your property that was reflected in a deed of trust. And over the next 10 years, that the amount of that deed of trust decreased annually by 1/10, so that at the end of 10 years, it had expired. And we've had a lot of these that have come up that have expired over the last couple of years, and basically we just canceled the deed of trust because they've been there for the 10 years. And y'all have had a couple more of these where an individual had one of these deeds of trust and died before the end of the 10-year period, and the family came forward asking the county to forgive that, and the county's done that on a couple of occasions. This situation was unique because these folks, the Stamies, did not own any real property. So what Mr. Meyer did was he found folks who would rent them the property and were willing to go on the deed of trust with them. So the Stamies received a loan of $59,413.25, and that was used to purchase a mobile home that was then set up on the property. So there are actually, on the deed of trust, there are actually two couples, the Browns, Alan and Gail, who were the property owners, and the Stamies, Linda and Tommy, who were the owners of the mobile home. Sometime before the deed of trust expired on its own terms, Mr. Stamey died, and Mrs. Stamey moved away, evidently taking the mobile home with her, because there's not one out there now. So that was noted by Ms. Forney when we were investigating this. So as of today, the deed of trust has expired by its own terms on August 24th, 2016. And so the owners are entitled to have that deed of trust canceled on the property, except for the fact that the deed of trust borrowers, the Stamies, evidently violated the terms of the deed of trust by Mrs. Stamey taking off with the mobile home. So by its terms on the record, the deed of trust is entitled to be canceled because it's been more than 10 years since the loan was granted. But Ms. Forney's investigation revealed that the co-borrowers had violated a term of the deed of trust, which was absconding with personal property.
So, the federal government provided this money, right at $60,000
Yeah.
for a mobile home, a single wide mobile home. Do we have any idea what kind of mobile home that was?
Not off the top of my head.
Specified in this deed of trust, it doesn't appear.
No.
So they were never expected to pay that money back. They were just expected to live there.
Exactly. That was the only term of the deed of trust, was to live there for the next 10 years.
So how does it become the county's responsibility to forgive that deed of trust?
Well, whenever a deed of trust expires, it is the obligation of the grantee of the deed of trust or the trustee of the deed of trust to cancel that deed of trust on the public record.
So Dale was acting on behalf of the county. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah, if the funds came to the county lent them out, and there was no obligation to repay, only a 10-year term.
I think we all had the same thoughts about this one. You called that unique, did you not?
I did, because in every other situation where additions and changes were made to property, the person who signed the deed of trust was the owner of the real estate as well as the owner of the fixtures on the real estate.
Any other thoughts or any more clarification needed? All right, thank you, Mr. County Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion items before us at this time? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this session. All in favor, signify by raising the hands. We'll stand adjourned until 4 o'clock. So you have about a 6-7 minute break here.